look at some alternative ways in order to suppress water hemp and white mold. And so Damon and Rodrigo came up with this idea. So this was we'll call this the test year of putting these research plots out on the landscape. So we were lucky enough to find 3 cooperators across the state that were willing to, already had rye planted this spring, and were willing to cooperate with us, because what we needed to do is we needed to come in and we needed to establish a control. So what you walk through, you notice you walk through separate plots. Those are our tilled sites, and then we had this area here that was roller crimped. And so the idea here, and as the gentleman had talked about, is using this cereal rye to help reduce the amount of light that gets to the soil surface, so that we can help to control these 2 pest species. So we established this, and if you have this, so Bob, I know, was a little anxious to get planted this spring, but we waited forever, right? We waited forever to anthesis. So this year with the cool springs, we wanted to make sure that when we rolled the cereal rye that it stayed down. We wanted to be able to terminate it, even though we were using herbicides later on to terminate it, but we wanted to make sure that when we pushed it to the ground that it stayed to the ground. We wanted that stalk to split. And so we had to wait. Looking back, it seems so long ago, May 25th. So Bob,
that we planted it?
That was the day we planted it.
Okay, yeah.
We roller crimped in the morning, and then we came back in the afternoon. So Damon was able to, if you want.
It would just simply get absorbed like a sponge into the sand, and then it would stand back up. And so we actually had to go back up to that particular location and actually mow the top of the rye off to help the beans come through. So we are seeing, now that we're out sort of on multiple locations, we are seeing some variability in terms of soil type and the success roller crimping there. But I will say that, you know, these heavier soils they seem to break the stem a lot more, and Erin concurs with that assessment as well, and talking with her on some of this too. The other thing I'll mention while I have the podium for a minute is that you'll see the Cobra treatments here. I mentioned Cobra and the fact that we can use it to suppress white mold. I get asked a lot about the mechanism of, you know, why does an herbicide work against the fungus, right? What's going on there? It's actually all related to the plant. Okay, and there's actually 2 mechanisms that have been worked out, and this has been worked on and peer-reviewed and published. The first one is probably pretty apparent. What do you notice between the canopy here and the canopy over there? We didn't put Cobra. We're about a growth stage behind, right? We got more open canopy here. Okay, so first thing, canopy modification. Okay, anything we do to slow down, and this is opposite from weeds, and this is why Rodrigo and I have been trying to come up with solutions to manage the 2 things together. Anything we can do to slow down canopy helps on the disease side of things. The trade-off is the weed issue, right? Okay, so we've got canopy modification. The other thing that happens when we apply Cobra, or the active ingredient lactofen that's in Cobra, is that it initiates what's called an induced systemic resistance response. Okay, so it's not really it's sort of an immune system response, but not really. These hormones get upregulated, there's defense responses that follow from that hormone upregulation, and the plant actually becomes more resistant to infection. So there's actually a resistance that's incited when we apply that lactofen product. And that is also the case with other, what number group is that, guys? I'm not a weed scientist. 14. Other group 14s will do similar things. Okay? So, one other thing I'll mention, we've been asked a lot about, okay, I'm interested in Cobra because I like that it's cheap. I can, you know, put it on. Can I go out early at, say, V2 or so and put an application of Cobra on, you know, and still get the same response? And we've done quite a bit of that work because we were very interested in how can we reduce the damage that we get in the yield hit but still capitalize on the resistance.
What was interesting out here is what we had was a bunch of winter annuals that just kind of disappeared. There was some shepherd purse, some dandelion, but it was nothing that we were really focusing on, such as that lamb's quarter or that water hemp. So that took me hours and hours and hours. This was just a nice walk in the park to count here. So and that's where unfortunately seeing is believing, but we came back with our post-application, and so you'll notice it was a little bit late, so we do have some escapes of that water hemp. If you see them, pull them. Help me out here. So my hoe is in my truck, but if you could pull those for me. Same with the volunteer corn. I think I got most of them, but I will take any help I can get. But it was a very impressive for a soil scientist. Looking at how well the cereal rye has done at suppressing weeds was tremendous. So seeing was believing. So even though Bob was a little nervous, we got in a little later. Right, we'll see, we're going to take this to yield, and that's why you see these 30-foot buffers here. We will take yield on all of these treatments and see if there is a difference between the tilled versus the roller crimped, because everything was the same except the roller crimping treatment. Everybody got the same herbicides, everybody got either Cobra or non-Cobra, and we'll also see if that Cobra had any effect on yield as well. But obviously we're mid-season, the beans are looking great. Are you happy with how they look, Bob?
I have some questions and comments, I guess.
You betcha.
I'm listening to tours about 10 days ahead and produces a lot more biomass. The organic folks don't like their rye because when they crimp, they cannot kill it because it's too much biomass. We love it because we can crimp, and then what we recommend is come with glyphosate on top. And you don't need a crimper. That roller you just described, all you need to do is roll it. And then you do glyphosate. Rye and glyphosate get along.
I understand it's trying to break the stem up, but
Yes.
you just need to kink that first one off the ground level. But after that, the rest is going to die anyways, correct?
If you do that at the right time, and that right time is usually very late May, early June. We did it, we pushed. When we did it in our plus, like Damon is describing, what happened, it all popped back up.
Okay, yeah.
So when it pops back up, you got to monitor, because if you do a shot of glyphosate on top, you have a beautiful mat, just like Jamie has here,
Yep.
and you don't have any seed that's going to be produced.
Right.
When we let that come back, and it took us about 10 bushels of soybean. So the crimping systems works great if you're willing to wait until late May, early June, and you do a really good job crimping it multiple times.
Right.
If you don't want to use herbicide, that's okay. But in our conventional systems, we have the beauty that we can use early maturing rye, high biomass, you lay it flat, you spray with glyphosate, you get the mat. And just another point, Jamie, what was our pre here? Pre-herbicide?
Fierce, easy, and glyphosate.
Okay, so we have a herbicide with 2 active ingredients. It's a combination of Valor Zidra. So you have that nice mat. You can take a look there. That pre-herbicide combined. Next, I mean, the technology is really catching up to us, this green-to-green spraying. If you have a scenario like this where you have a strong foundation and you only have a few escapes, you don't necessarily need to spray an entire field. I mean, we're probably some years from that, seeing that available, but we don't need to treat an entire landscape when you have that. You only need a few escapes to be treated. That's when you can target, spray them. And that's some of the new areas of research that we're starting to play with. I think that's where the future is headed anyways. So
It's a V2-ish. If you go at the DE to even VC, Aaron reports tons of damage there. But if you go at that sort of D2 stage, they've had decent luck with rolling and crimping at that point. But the issue there is going to be it's a narrow window, and if it's raining, there could be some issues there. But again, that's where, if you're not in a pure organic system, we have some tools to terminate that rye if we do get into that situation. The organic folks are always struggling because they don't have, so they're trying to find varieties that'll have that biomass but flower earlier so we can push the program. So, pay attention because I think you're going to start seeing some other varieties that'll be coming out and available or being promoted for using in this system.
we have this trial down at Brooklyn there. We picked that organic variety, right, Nick? Because we needed different timings, and it was the first year we were working with that variety. We almost lost control of that, right, Nick? How fast
Yeah,
they came together.
in the previous work in Colby's we were getting pretty excited when we were getting about 3,000 to 5,000 pounds of dry matter per acre. I was getting about knee high. That's looking maybe a little bit less biomass on the ground than that. When we switched this variety, we were already tillering in October of last year, and then come this spring, a clean 2-3 weeks earlier, we already had about this tall, close to 10,000 pounds of dry, and that was our earlier termination. So we were able to really push it. I mean, to a point where our machine wasn't even really able to get